I'd been on the Albatross for 7 years, and in all that time, I'd never seen anything like this. Space mining wasn't supposed to be a job full of surprises. It was supposed to be routine: blast the rocks, extract the metals, go home a little richer and a lot more worn out. But today, standing in the hold, I couldn't keep my eyes off the thing they'd dragged in from the asteroid. A suit. The Albatross was a relic, barely holding itself together. The walls of the hold groaned as the ship adjusted its orientation, the weight of the cargo shifting slightly. Captain Harrison was always on me to keep her running, patching up whatever had failed that week. It was a job that took most of my time, but I didn't mind it. I liked the predictability of it, the way problems had solutions if you just knew where to look and had the right tools. The suit, though, was something different. It was sleek, almost organic. The material was a deep, dull silver, with dark, vein-like patterns running across its surface. There weren't any seams that I could see, no joints, no welds, nothing to indicate how it had been made. It looked like it had grown rather than been built. I ran my hand over the surface, feeling a faint warmth. "You think it's worth something?" Matt Callahan's voice cut through my thoughts. He was standing a few feet away, his eyes wide with curiosity. The kid was new, still had that eagerness that the rest of us had lost years ago. I shrugged, not looking away from the suit. "Maybe. Depends on what it does. Could be valuable. Could be just another piece of junk." But I knew it wasn't junk. There was something about it. The craftsmanship, the way it seemed to vibrate with energy, that told me this was something different. Captain Harrison and Dr. Grant were standing by the entrance to the hold, watching. Harrison had that look on his face, the one that said he was thinking about the risks versus the rewards. Grant, on the other hand, looked uneasy. She'd always been cautious, and anything alien made her nervous. I couldn't blame her. Out here, anything unfamiliar usually meant danger. "Jack," Harrison called out, "you think it's safe?" I turned to face him, wiping my hands on my coveralls. "Safe enough. Doesn't look like a weapon, at least. Could be some kind of protective suit. Maybe for EVA work." I paused, glancing back at the suit. "I'd like to run some tests on it." Grant approached, her brow furrowed. "Jack, we don't know what that thing is. It could be dangerous. It could be contaminated." She hesitated, then added, "We should quarantine it until we know more." Harrison nodded, considering her words. He was a cautious man, but he was also a pragmatist. He knew we were out here for one reason: profit. And if the suit could make our lives easier, make the mining less dangerous, it was worth the risk. "Let Jack take a look," he said finally. "But be careful, any sign of trouble and we ditch it. Understood?" I gave a short nod. Understood. I spent the next few hours in the workshop, running tests on the suit. The material was tough, more resistant than any metal we had on board, yet it moved with an almost fluid grace. I tried cutting into it with a plasma torch, but the blade just slid off, leaving no mark. It seemed to have a kind of intelligence, adapting to whatever I threw at it. Matt hovered nearby, asking questions, his excitement evident. He reminded me of myself when I'd first joined the Albatross. Back then, everything about space seemed like an adventure. Now, it was just a job. A dangerous, dirty job. But this suit brought back a bit of that old excitement. "What do you think it's for?" Matt asked, leaning over my shoulder as I examined the interior of the suit. "Could be anything," I said. "Maybe it's for working in extreme conditions. Heat, radiation, vacuum. It's got no visible life support, which means it's either incredibly advanced or..." I trailed off, my mind racing with possibilities. The suit didn't have any ports or connectors, no sign of where an air supply might attach. Yet something about it made me think it was meant to be used in space. Matt's eyes widened. "You think it could let someone work outside without needing a traditional EVA suit?" I shrugged, but the thought had already taken root. If the suit could function in the vacuum of space without an external air supply, it would be revolutionary. It would change everything about how we worked, how we survived out here. I glanced at Matt, then back at the suit. Only one way to find out. The next day, I suited up. I could tell Grant was pissed about it, but she kept her distance, her disapproval clear in the tight line of her mouth. Harrison observed quietly, his features betraying no emotion. Matt was the only one who seemed excited, his eyes glued to the suit as I stepped into it. It was a strange sensation, the way the suit seemed to mold itself around me, the material shifting and flowing until it fit perfectly. It was warm, almost like it was alive. The helmet closed over my head, sealing with a soft hiss, and all I could hear was the steady rhythm of my breathing. I stepped into the airlock, the metal door sliding shut behind me. The room was cramped, the walls scuffed and dented from years of use. I keyed in the depressurization sequence, feeling the weightlessness as the air drained away. The outer door opened, revealing the endless black of space. I took a step forward, and the first thing I noticed was that I could breathe. No external oxygen, no life support, just the suit. It was working. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a strange sensation. I took another step, feeling a resistance against my movements. It wasn't strong, just a gentle push, like walking against a light current. I frowned, looking around, but there was nothing. Just the asteroid field and the distant glow of the stars. I took another step and the resistance became stronger, a subtle force pushing against me, making each movement harder. "Jack, you all right out there?" Harrison's voice crackled over the comm, his tone wary. I hesitated, then forced a smile. "Yeah, just feels a little weird, like something's pushing back." I tried to keep my voice light, but the unease was growing. "Get back inside," Grant's voice cut in, sharp with worry. "We don't know what that thing is doing to you." I wanted to argue, to push further, but the resistance was growing stronger, and a cold knot of fear was forming in my gut. I turned, making my way back to the airlock. Each step felt like I was moving through thick mud, the unseen force trying to hold me back. By the time I reached the airlock, I was breathing hard, my heart pounding in my ears. The door slid shut behind me, and the weight of the suit seemed to lift. I leaned against the wall, my breath coming in sharp bursts. Matt was waiting for me as I stepped out of the suit, his eyes wide with excitement. "Did it work? Could you breathe out there?" I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the sensation of that unseen force. "Yeah," I said finally. "Yeah, it worked." But even as I stood there, I had a lingering sense that it had been more than resistance. It had felt like something was out there, pushing back. Matt was buzzing with questions. He'd been waiting for me when I got out of the suit, practically bouncing on his feet. He hadn't felt what I'd felt. To him it was just exciting, a new discovery, a potential breakthrough. But for me there was an unease I couldn't shake. The suit worked, but there was something else, something hidden beneath the surface. "Did it feel weird?" Matt asked for the 5th time, leaning over the bench where I was disassembling an old mining drill for parts. His eyes were wide and his voice was filled with that eager curiosity that made him seem even younger than he was. I looked up. "Yeah, it felt weird," I said, keeping my tone even. Like something was out there, something I couldn't see. Matt frowned, his enthusiasm dimming slightly. "What do you mean?" I sighed, setting the drill down and rubbing my eyes. I hadn't slept well the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that resistance again, like something was holding me back. I don't know, kid. It just felt wrong, like I wasn't alone. Matt was quiet for a moment. "But you could breathe, right? I mean, the suit worked?" "Yeah, it worked," I said, nodding. "I could breathe fine. No issues there." I paused, glancing at the suit. "But there's more to it. I think the suit does something else, something we don't understand yet." Captain Harrison and Dr. Grant had been watching me closely since the test. Harrison hadn't said much, just nodded when I gave my report, his eyes unreadable. Grant, on the other hand, was openly skeptical. She didn't like the suit, didn't like the fact that I'd put it on without knowing what it could do. She'd pulled me aside after the test, her face tight with worry. "Jack, this isn't a game," she'd said. "We don't know what that thing is or what it could do to you. You need to be careful." I'd nodded, promised her I would. She thought I was being reckless, and maybe I was. But there was something about the suit that called to me, something that made me want to understand it, no matter the risk. The next day we were scheduled for a mining operation. Captain Harrison wanted to extract a promising deposit we had detected on a nearby asteroid. It was a standard procedure: drill into the rock, extract the metals, and move on. But I had other plans. I wanted to test the suit again, out in the open, where it really mattered. The Albatross maneuvered into position, the asteroid looming large on the external monitors. The mining rig, a combination of automated drilling arms, electromagnetic clamps, and high-power laser cutters, was already being set up by the crew. Matt suited up in his standard EVA gear, prepping for the task ahead. The others were busy with their assigned roles, leaving me with the perfect opportunity. I made my way to the workshop. The suit was still there, hanging silently, waiting for me. Without another thought, I stepped into it. The material flowed around me, sealing with a familiar warmth, the helmet locking into place with a soft hiss. My breathing echoed in my ears, steady and calm. "Jack, status report." Harrison's voice crackled in my comm. I looked at the external feed. Matt was already out on the surface of the asteroid, connecting power lines to the mining rig. "Just finishing up some checks," I replied, stepping into the airlock. I knew what I was doing was risky, but I had to understand this suit, had to know if it could change the way we operated out here. The airlock cycled, the door sliding open to reveal the black expanse of space. I stepped out onto the asteroid's surface, the suit allowing me to walk as if it were magnetically attached, securing me in place with each step. Matt glanced up, his posture visibly stiffening in surprise. "Jack, why are you wearing that suit?" he asked, his voice crackling over the comm, a note of concern creeping in. "Wanted to test it during a real mining operation," I replied, trying to sound casual. "See if it actually handles better out here." Matt nodded, turning back to his work. The mining rig was already drilling, the laser cutters boring into the rock. I could feel the vibration through the ground, even through the suit, small tremors that rippled outward from the rig. I moved closer, watching as the drills worked their way deeper, the clamps securing the equipment in place. Then, it started again. The resistance. A subtle push, like an unseen current pressing against me. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the task at hand, but it became stronger with each passing moment. I felt like I was wading through thick water, every movement more laborious than the last. "Jack, you good?" Matt's voice came through the comm, tinged with concern. He must have noticed my hesitation. "Yeah, just feels weird," I replied. "Like something's pushing against me." Matt frowned, his helmet tilting slightly as he looked over at me. "You sure you're all right? You want to head back in?" I shook my head, though the resistance was growing. "No, I need to see this through." I took a few steps closer to the rig, my gaze fixed on the hole the laser was cutting into the asteroid. The light from the laser reflected off the suit, casting shifting shadows around me. The pressure increased. It was as if something was trying to push me away from the rig. I planted my feet, trying to steady myself, but the force was overpowering. My heart began to pound, a sense of dread washing over me. "Jack, get back to the ship!" It was Captain Harrison, his voice sharp over the comm. "Now!" I wanted to argue, to push back against the order, but the force was overwhelming. I turned, each step a battle as I made my way back towards the airlock. Matt followed, his concern evident in the way he stayed close, ready to help if I faltered. By the time I reached the airlock, my body ached from the effort. The door slid shut behind me and the pressure immediately eased, the resistance vanishing as quickly as it had come. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing, my heart still racing. Matt stepped in after me. What the hell was that, Jack? I shook my head, peeling off the helmet. I don't know, I said, my voice shaky. But it's real. There's something out there. We made our way back to the workshop, the suit sliding off me. Captain Harrison and Dr. Grant were waiting, their expressions a mix of anger and worry. Jack, you disobeyed orders, Harrison said. You put yourself and Matt at risk. I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. I had to know, I said quietly. There's something about that suit. It's like it's aware. Grant approached. You need to stop this, Jack. Whatever that suit is, it's dangerous. It's affecting you. I looked at her, then at the suit, hanging there silently. She was right. I could feel it. Something was changing inside me. Something I couldn't quite understand. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I couldn't just walk away. There were answers here, somewhere beneath the surface, and I needed to find them. The suit was sealed away, but that didn't mean the questions went with it. Whatever was out there on the surface had left a mark on me, and it wasn't just the strain in my muscles from pushing against that invisible force. It was something deeper. The sense that we had brushed up against something we couldn't possibly understand, and that it wasn't done with us yet. 2 days later, we were back at it. Captain Harrison wanted to get the operation back on track. The asteroid was a gold mine, and every hour we delayed was an hour we weren't making money. I could see the tension in his eyes every time he looked at the external monitors. He wanted us out there, drilling and extracting, but the memory of the suit and whatever had pushed against me weighed heavily on all of us. Matt and I were out on the surface again, this time in standard EVA suits. The mining rig had been repositioned, its massive clamps securing it to the uneven surface of the asteroid. The electromagnetic drills were set up, and the cutters hummed as they dug into the rock, sending vibrations through the ground beneath our feet. I kept my eyes on the readouts, trying to focus on the job, but my mind kept drifting back to the suit, to that feeling of resistance. Jack, you with me? Matt's voice crackled over the comm, breaking me out of my thoughts. I looked up, blinking. Matt was standing a few meters away, gesturing at the rig. Yeah, sorry, I said, shaking my head. Just distracted. Matt nodded, his gaze lingering on me for a moment before he turned back to the rig. He was worried. I could tell. The excitement he'd had about the suit had faded, replaced by something more cautious. He was still curious, still eager to learn, but there was a wariness there now. The rig shuddered as the drills bit deeper, and I watched as the laser cutters carved their way into the asteroid. The process was routine, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. I felt it in the way Matt moved, in the way I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see something that shouldn't be there. In the distance, I noticed something solid, a shape, humanoid but not. It was standing just beyond the rig, its form shimmering like it was made of heat haze. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but it didn't go away. It just stood there, watching. Matt, do you see that? Matt turned, following my line of sight. He hesitated, his gaze scanning the distance. See what? He asked, his voice uncertain. My heart sank. Right there, I insisted, pointing. But Matt shook his head, a frown forming behind his visor. Jack, there's nothing there, he said, his tone uneasy. He looked back at me, clearly concerned. The figure moved. It wasn't a smooth movement, more like a stutter, like it was skipping frames. One moment it was standing still, the next it was closer, its head tilted to one side, studying me. I felt a chill run down my spine, my hands clenching around the controls of the rig. Captain Harrison, I've got something out here, I said, my voice shaking. There was a pause, then Harrison's voice came through, tight with tension. What do you mean, something? Describe it. I tried to find the words, but nothing seemed right. It's humanoid, shimmering, like it's not all there. I glanced at Matt, who was standing still, looking confused. Matt doesn't see it, but it's moving towards us. The figure took another step, its form flickering, and I felt the resistance again. The same push I'd felt when I was wearing the suit, only now it was stronger. "Jack, get back to the ship," Harrison said, his voice urgent. I didn't need to be told twice. I turned, grabbing Matt's arm and pulling him with me. Matt stumbled, trying to keep up, confusion and worry evident in his movements. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet, the vibrations from the rig becoming stronger. I glanced back and the figure was still there, still moving towards us, its form shifting and flickering like a bad transmission. Matt struggled, his movements awkward, trying to keep up with me as I pulled him along. He had no idea what was happening, but he could sense my fear. "Jack, what's going on?" he asked, his voice tight with confusion. My heart pounded as the force pressed against me, making each step a struggle. I glanced back, the figure getting closer, its form flickering like a bad transmission. I didn't answer Matt, the panic tightening my throat. We reached the airlock and I slapped the control panel, the door sliding open with agonizing slowness. Matt stumbled inside and I followed, the door sealing shut behind us. The resistance vanished, and I collapsed against the wall. Matt was on the floor, his face pale behind the visor. "Jack, what happened out there? You were freaking out." I shook my head. "I don't know, but it's real. Whatever it is, it's real." Captain Harrison and Dr. Grant were waiting for us in the workshop. The suit was still sealed away, locked behind a reinforced barrier, but I could feel it, a pull, like it was calling to me. I tried to ignore it, focusing on Harrison and Grant instead. "What did you see out there?" Harrison asked, his voice tight. I took a deep breath. "It was humanoid," I said, "but it wasn't right. It moved like it was glitching, like it wasn't all there." Grant frowned, her arms crossed. "And you felt the resistance again?" I nodded. "Stronger this time." Harrison exchanged a glance with Grant, then looked back at me. "Do you think it's connected to the suit?" "Yeah, I think so. The suit, the figure, they're part of the same thing. It's like the suit opened a door, and now there's no close in it." Grant sighed, looking frustrated but concerned. "We need to be smart about this, Jack. We can't afford to make mistakes. Whatever this is, it's dangerous, and it's clearly escalating." I looked at her, then at Harrison. "I know, but we can't just ignore it. There's something here, something bigger than us. We need to understand it." Harrison was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this by the book. No more solo stunts, no unnecessary risks. We analyze everything, we stay cautious, and if it gets worse, we end it. Understood?" I nodded, though a part of me knew it wouldn't be that simple. Whatever was out there, whatever was pushing back against us, it wasn't going to let us go that easily. We had made our reports, shared our fears, and questioned our sanity, but Captain Harrison wasn't one to back down from the unknown. He wasn't going to let the possibility of a breakthrough slip away just because we were afraid. So, despite Dr. Grant's continued reservations, we decided to test the suit one more time. I was back in the workshop, staring at the suit as it hung there, almost expectantly. It had called to me, not just as a tool, but as a key. The urge to understand had grown stronger, and I knew, deep down, that this time would be different. Captain Harrison's voice crackled over the comm, breaking my reverie. "Jack, you ready? Remember, we keep this by the book, no heroics. You go out there, you assess, and you come right back." "Copy that, Captain. No heroics." I approached the suit and took a deep breath. Sliding into it felt familiar now. The way the material molded itself to my body, the gentle warmth as it sealed me in. The helmet locked with a hiss, and I was once again enveloped in its quiet, controlled environment. The workshop doors opened, and I made my way to the airlock. The airlock cycled, and I stepped out onto the asteroid's surface, the darkness of space stretching infinitely around me. The mining rig loomed nearby, silent and dormant. I could feel the subtle pull of the suit, a faint vibration that seemed to resonate with something beyond what I could see. "Jack, everything looked good." Matt's voice broke through, tense and filled with a hint of worry. I glanced around, the shimmering forms just beginning to come into focus. I think so, I replied. The figures, they're here. I took a few careful steps, my boots securing my footing as the shimmering figures appeared around me, more vivid than before. Their forms were still flickering, but this time I could see details. Long, slender limbs that seemed to move with a grace, their bodies shifting in and out of visibility, as if they existed in multiple places at once. One of them moved closer, and I didn't feel the same resistance as before. Instead, I felt a pull, an invitation. My heart pounded as I reached out, my hand brushing against the shimmering form. The moment my fingers made contact, I felt a jolt, a surge of energy that coursed through me, filling my mind with images and sounds. "Jack, report!" Harrison's voice cut through the confusion, and I struggled to focus, my mind racing to make sense of what I was experiencing. I think they're trying to communicate. It's like they're showing me something, but it's not clear." The figure moved again, its form shifting, and suddenly I understood. The suit was a bridge, a conduit that allowed me to perceive and understand the being's language. They weren't trying to scare us or push us away. They were trying to communicate. Images flooded my mind, visions of a vast, desolate world, barren and empty, a place that seemed to have been abandoned long ago. The beings needed something. Resources, materials, things they couldn't gather in their current form. They lacked the physical presence necessary to interact with the material world, and they'd been reaching out, trying to make contact for ages. The suit was part of an ancient ambassador program, a way for their civilization to communicate across dimensions. The figure's hand moved, touching my chest, and I felt the knowledge settle into me. A purpose, a mission. They wanted coexistence, not conflict. They needed help, and they were willing to share knowledge, technology, things that could change the way we lived, if we only listened. "Captain," I said, my voice steadier now. "They're not hostile. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Harrison sounded incredulous. "Jack, what are you talking about?" "They need resources," I explained, trying to convey the weight of what I was feeling. "They can't interact with our world physically. They're trapped between dimensions. The suit, it's part of an ambassador program. It's meant to let them communicate with beings like us. They've been trying to reach out, but no one could see or hear them until now." There was a long pause, and I could hear the tension in Harrison's breath. "Are you saying they want a deal?" "Yes," I said. "They're willing to share knowledge, technology. They want to coexist, not fight. They just need access to resources we can gather for them." Another pause, then Harrison's voice came back, more measured. "All right, Jack, come back in. We'll discuss this." I turned, the shimmering forms still around me, their presence less intimidating now. They were waiting, their movements deliberate and purposeful, as if they knew what came next depended on us. I made my way back to the airlock, the figures fading from view as I stepped inside, the door sealing shut behind me. Matt and Dr. Grant were waiting for me as I entered the workshop. "What did you see?" Grant asked, her voice hushed. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "They want peace. They've been trying to communicate, but they needed someone to wear the suit, to bridge the gap. They need resources, but they're willing to offer us knowledge in return." Grant frowned, her skepticism evident. "And you believe them?" I nodded. "Yes, I felt it. They're not hostile. They're desperate. They've been alone for so long, trying to reach out, but no one could hear them. The suit, it's their way of talking to us." "And you're willing to act as their ambassador?" Harrison asked. I looked at him, then at the others. I think I have to. If there's a chance we can coexist, if there's a way to help them and gain something in return, then we need to try. They're offering us something incredible. We can't just turn our backs on that." Harrison was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Jack. We'll proceed. But we do this carefully. We take it slow, we verify everything. You'll be our point of contact, but if there's any sign of danger, we pull back, understood?" "Understood, Captain," I said, a sense of purpose settling over me. As I looked back at the suit, Still hanging there, I felt the pull again, a connection, a sense that this was only the beginning. The beings had reached out, and we had answered. Now it was up to us to decide what came next. We were stepping into the unknown, but it didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like an opportunity, a chance to build something new, to bridge the gap between worlds and create something greater than ourselves. And for that, I was willing to take the risk.